Why would the most lethal hunter on the planet ever back away from something so much weaker than itself? Picture a grizzly bear, 800 pounds of muscle and claw, capable of snapping a moose's spine with one strike, or a great white shark that can crush bone in a single bite. Now picture that same animal freezing, turning, and simply walking away from an unarmed person standing a few feet away. It sounds backwards. You are standing there, heart pounding, the wind pushing the smell of wet fur toward you, watching an animal that could end your life in seconds choose, instead, to leave. Your legs feel locked in place. Somewhere behind your ribs, a voice is telling you to run, but running is the last thing you should do, and some part of you already knows that. Every second stretches out longer than it should, the animal's eyes fixed on you, its weight shifting, and still, nothing happens. The predator has the teeth, the speed, every physical advantage that matters in a fight. And yet, over and over, in forests and oceans and grasslands around the world, it hesitates. Why would evolution build a killing machine and then quietly teach it to fear the one creature it could destroy without effort? There is an answer, and it has almost nothing to do with strength. What actually happens in most of these encounters is not luck. Wildlife researchers have logged thousands of close-range meetings between large predators and humans, and the pattern that shows up again and again is retreat, not attack. Bears back off in the overwhelming majority of documented encounters. Big cats that could ambush a person in complete silence, from cover with every advantage on their side, choose not to. If you have ever wondered whether nature really does play it safe more often than we assume, this is where the numbers say yes. Before we go further, if this kind of pattern in animal behavior is the sort of thing you like digging into, sticking around and subscribing means you will not miss the next one. Here's the part most people get wrong. It is not that these animals are naturally passive. Lions still hunt buffalo twice their size. Sharks still take down prey that fights back hard. So why does the calculation change so drastically the moment a human enters the frame? The short answer is that a predator's brain does not see a human as ordinary prey, and that single distinction rewires everything. It is not born knowing we are dangerous. It learns that usually the hard way and then never forgets. An animal does not sit down and weigh pros and cons the way we do. It reacts to pattern, upright posture, direct eye contact, the smell of smoke, the crack of a raised voice, and over time all of it gets filed under one label: not worth the risk. Compare that to how the same predator treats a deer or a seal, prey it will chase without a second of hesitation, prey that has never once fought back in a way that mattered. Humans broke that pattern somewhere along the way, and the animal noticed. This is not weakness overriding aggression. It is closer to a debt that gets paid forward, one bad outcome logged deep enough that it starts guiding decisions the animal itself never consciously makes. Here is where it gets strange though, because plenty of the animals avoiding you have never personally been burned. They were never chased, never shot at, never hurt by a human in their life. So where exactly does that fear come from? Young elephants raised near mothers who steer clear of human settlements tend to do the same, without ever needing a bad encounter of their own. Researchers studying elephant herds found that groups led by older, more experienced matriarchs were far more likely to move away from people calmly, while herds led by younger, less experienced females reacted with panic or aggression almost twice as often. That gap has nothing to do with size or hormones. It is inherited knowledge, passed the way a story gets passed around a fire, one generation warning the next without a single shared wound between them. The same pattern shows up in wolves, in some populations of big cats, young animals watching how the adults around them respond long before they ever face a human themselves, copying caution the same way they copy a hunting technique, which raises the real question sitting underneath all of this. If an animal never had to be hurt to learn we are dangerous, what does that actually say about how our species has moved through the world? Not every predator plays by this rule though, and the exceptions matter just as much, maybe more than the rule itself. Some animals become habituated, worn down by repeated exposure around campsites or feeding zones, garbage bins, tourists tossing food from car windows, until the old warning signals simply stop registering as danger at all. Park rangers see this constantly, the same individual growing bolder year after year, closing distances it would never have tolerated a decade earlier. Others are pushed by hunger severe enough to flip the entire calculation, since starvation becomes a far bigger threat than any human could ever be, and a starving animal will gamble on a fight it would normally walk away from without thinking twice, because an empty stomach changes what counts as an acceptable risk. Think of it the way a person might treat a stove they were told is hot but have never actually touched. Sooner or later, under the right pressure, the old warning stops being enough. These are not contradictions of the pattern. They are its edges, the places where the usual math quietly breaks down. Now here is the part almost nobody expects. Scientists studying grizzly populations in Yellowstone National Park through the 1990s were not looking for a story about learned fear at all. They were simply tracking movement patterns, logging coordinates, running the kind of routine survey that rarely makes headlines. What they found instead stopped the project in its tracks. Over decades, a measurable shift in behavior had taken hold, with bears in high tourist zones displaying significantly stronger avoidance responses than bears living in untouched backcountry regions of that same park. Same species, same landscape, completely different relationship with risk, shaped entirely by generations of managed contact with people, proof that this kind of learning can take hold inside a single population faster than most people would guess. It was not a difference researchers expected to find this clearly, and it forced a rethink of how fast this kind of learned behavior can actually spread through a population. Remember that grizzly from the opening, the one standing there deciding whether to charge. That decision was not made in the moment. It was inherited, taught, and reinforced long before that particular animal ever saw a human face. If you have ever caught yourself wondering what you would actually do standing in that exact spot, drop your honest answer below, and while you are there, subscribing helps this kind of research reach more people who are curious about it too. So, go back to that moment, frozen in front of the bear, the shark, the animal that has decided you are not worth the fight. The truth is that Predator was never afraid of you, specifically. It was afraid of everything you represent. Generations of consequences it never personally witnessed, but somehow still carries in its bones. That is not weakness. That is one of the oldest forms of intelligence in nature. The ability to avoid a fight before it starts, to let caution do the work that force never had to. Maybe the most dangerous thing about humans was never our teeth or our claws, but the fact that other species learned to fear us without ever needing to understand exactly why. If this kind of question stuck with you the way it stuck with us while researching it, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell us in the comments which animal encounter surprised you the most.